Alright, long time no video here, so this is me returning back to my Living Word Bible. Trying to take some time to get back to re-editing this and also figure out what I'm gonna do with it. So I used to have a community on Discord, had to leave that for a year running a business of mine, and now I have some time again. But I also removed everybody off of Discord because for one it wasn't being used at all, so I wasn't getting the interaction that I was trying to get on there for 4 years. So it was, funny enough, not even really the, ironically, Discord or bickering that you would see on a lot of other Discord channels of people just throwing their opinion out left and right, even though this is pretty much what I was inviting. But I don't know if it was because I actually had a platform to put their money where their mouth is, and actually start working through these things instead of just have blatant opinions left and right. So I'm not sure what the issue was, but I tried to hold studies, and I think the studies were definitely a lot better than I've seen in most places because we had the text on the screen, so you would have the text to stay in line with, right? So it's like, okay, this is what we're reading, this is what we're focusing on. If you have any additional notes or ideas, or you find that something is difficult to understand because of how it's phrased, whatever translation I used, I think I mostly copied from like the ESV, and then it's long changed away from that. But we would go to the Hebrew and the Greek and whatever sources we could and really try to figure out what it was really trying to say. And if I felt that I could safely change the wording to be a little easier to read, then we would do that, and we would do that as a group. And if I felt like, well, you know what, I don't want to change the wording too much because it doesn't sound close enough, then or add any additional understanding, I'll just put that on the side of the word or make a whole little thing about it on the side, right? So this is where, I'm going to edit this as I do this. This is where we would be able to put in all of our information. So if I had come across information at some point, cite your sources, right? So anytime I would have some sort of source of information, then I typically would try to say where I got that information. Not all the time, because at first, whenever I started doing this, I was doing it for myself, and I didn't think about citing actual like websites for sources. This gets all moved around because of adding information. And this is why it's called the Living Word Bible, is because it never stays solid, but at the same time, it should become more and more understandable and readable, right? Which is why I have highlighting, and all the dialogue is all separated. All the list of names and dates are all separated and in bold for all the places and numbers and people. Anything that's a single subject that's multiple words, I'll typically underline. And again, genealogies are separated and put into a list. If there's some sort of map or anything relevant to that information, then I'll try to put that on there. And again, it could be outdated, it could be false, it could be whatever it is. Or again, have contesting theories and ideas that might hold up, and I'll put both of them on there, right? So we'll figure out a way to put both of them on there. And if it has just too much information, there's too much of a debate or too much to pour through, then I'll make an entirely separate page and then just link it to there, right? So then it'll be like, if you want to know more information about this, click on this. Not that I'll really say it like that, but again, these are getting moved around a lot. Sometimes I'll separate it to the next page, and sometimes it's necessary to not have it split between that next page. I also had tried to put this in a pageless format, and I'm going back on that again because it just doesn't really work out. And I was trying to make it more feasible for people on mobile, but nobody was really using it on mobile anyhow. And there's also some issues about using this on an iPad or iPhone versus Android or PC or something because, or web page, I should say. Uh, Formatting would do some weird things, and also how the Google Docs app works. So this is all on Google Docs. I've tried to do this on other systems and also try to make like printable versions and stuff, and I just haven't found a good system or format that I like for that. Why is that like that? There we go. Again, this is where it gets kind of annoying where it kind of splits with the page, but this is more about the information and less about the look, right? This is not meant to be in a published format where everything is reviewed and then it's published, right? So again, look, Genesis 2 is splitting here, and if I put a page break there and then add some information, it'll kind of be weird later. But seeing as I have this big table right here, that's just the way it's got to be right now. And I'm trying to think about moving some of these tables, which I do like on the side preferably, but it's hard to get the text to wrap around, and sometimes I have to put them in a separate, table itself, and it gets weird when you look at it on mobile and you'll see half of it and things will get pushed around. It's very strange. So I just moved this one and added some information to it. This is, biblical cosmology. Whichever way you want to believe something, it doesn't matter. And that's kind of what it's trying to say here is like, okay, understand at least from the text perspective, this is most likely what they understood, and this is how they'll be speaking. So this is the entire foundation of what the Living Word Bible is supposed to be. It's not to push a narrative, it's not to be biased, it's just to be, reasonable and show like, okay, this is what they believed. If you believe something different, great, right? But this isn't to, change how you treat other people or anything like that, right? This is not one of those kind of issues. But often in these Bible groups, Torah groups especially, right, you'll have heavy debates and people will create factions against each other over topics like this or many, many, many other topics. And I don't know if this is one of the reasons that this was not getting popular over the last 7 years I've been working on this. I should say 5 years that I tried to really get it out to other people and see if they would kind of join me, and because this is supposed to be a group effort, but so far this has been 99% just me. Very little input from others, even while we're in the study, right? They might kind of prompt me to do more work, and then I've gotten really good at doing some of these things and looking at the Hebrew and understanding the etymology and all of this kind of thing, right? And really had a good sense and was starting to get some good wisdom to be able to put into here. And then it got to the point where I was understanding the scripture so much that I kind of felt like a lot of this work and these debates and all of this was just very pointless. Like, okay, there's just no point to going through and doing all of this kind of tedious work because it started feeding people's legalism type of thing, right? So this is not what I was wanting to promote, was legalism. So then we started working on, I put it under something called encyclopedia. It's still kind of a bad name for that, but I had these two major ones which I just called themes and concepts just because I didn't have a better terminology for this. So the themes was kind of like a loose kind of open-ended target here where it was just kind of vague. It wasn't to any specific topic, or I should say verse, or any sort of like issue in the Bible, but it was more so about just more, how do you say, I mean, as you see here, loving your neighbor, or how do you find joy, what is forgiveness, and so that we would just start making pages about this and then go and find as much verses as we could and have more of a philosophical discussion about it or something like that, right? And how do you actually apply this to your life? Let's actually make this a lot easier to be able to just open up and apply to yourself instead of having to pour through a whole bunch of text and maybe come across something that you feel like resonates with you or something like that, right? A good one right here was ego and self righteousness and things like this. So I had to have a place to put some of these things, and sometimes I didn't really know where to put them. So the concepts are going to be more about the topical issues, right? So you have what is this? Who is that? So it's who, what, when, where, why, and then how, and then some other random things. And I don't know. I started kind of breaking my construct of these. You know, how do you categorize things is kind of the issue sometimes. So sometimes there's a little issue with that. I don't know. I have that highlighted. Just maybe because I wanted to focus on doing that. I don't know. So you have different ideas and theories that people have had, whether they're a couple hundred years old or relatively new. It was just, or sometimes it was just be a question that someone had. They're like, "Oh man, what is blasphemy?" Well, let's go figure out what that is according to Scripture, right? And figure out like what is this, and is this even a topic of discussion? Is there even enough information? Sometimes like on this page, it might come from my own understanding, my own wisdom when it comes to this, and sometimes I might have a revelation where I'm like, oh wait, maybe it is just this simple, right? So I put it in there and go, okay, basically run with this or debate it, or do whatever you want to do with it, really, right? And I just hadn't had anyone that was really like wanting to challenge me, or not that again I want to be necessarily challenged. It was more about I wanted people to speak their mind and really understand what they understood as their beliefs. Did they really believe it, or was this something that a fad that they were running with, or was this just again parroting, right? Just parroting something and just being a fanboy of that type of idea and claiming, oh, you know this and you know that because you heard your favorite Bible teacher or preacher, pastor that was mentioning this idea, right? So some of these things, like what I have on the Holy Spirit, I think it kind of settles the idea and kind of gets rid of the whole debate of Trinity, not Trinity, because it kind of sits on the fence in a sense. But not that I'm trying to straddle a fence all the time, but sometimes the truth is kind of a combination of both sides. And this is kind of what I'm trying to resolve is take away the need for the debate, right? The debate is just pointless, and this is even what Paul was talking about, right? Just quit with the semantics and the debating and stuff. It doesn't get anywhere because you're not focusing on your own behavior. It's too much about the self, right? And it's all about me, and what you believe and trying to push that knowledge and belief onto others, right? Whereas I'm trying to create an equal ground here, a platform where people can dump all their information on, and then we can just look at it. Which I also had another page. I don't know if I have that up anywhere for like debated topics, something I haven't even really touched on here. And the idea was to take these topics and then look at how many sides there are, even if there's more than two sides to it, and go through and show all of the different verses that they're using to try to claim that this is true, and then see like a pros and cons list. Okay, you have 5 verses here that support this idea, but you have 20 verses over here that you say support this idea. Now, someone might say that those verses don't apply. Then we start saying the reason why someone would say that, right? But you might have 20 very loose supporting verses for that, right? But you might have 5 very strong ones. And again, this is just to get it all on one paper. And that way you don't have to start struggling and going through all your notes when you're sitting there trying to tell somebody, teach somebody, or debate with someone. And then you don't have just this battle of egos, right? So this is all about a cooperative scholarly work to work on something to get it all in one place, and then you can open up that document from a distance and go, well, you know what, there's all of these, I can see how that would work from this perspective, but if I look at this perspective, I can also see how that might work. You might also say, you know what, this one doesn't really work out very well, it's not as polished, it's not as clean, maybe it's kind of reaching. And you can look at the numbers of how many supporting things, or man, how long this research is compared to that one, and you can make up your own mind. And that's the idea: is make up your own mind. Everyone's going to make up their own mind anyways. So this is a way to kind of help support that. Again, never got onto these debates. I would have liked to do some of this again to put out the fire, not start the fire. But it seems to be that people don't like this idea of stopping the debates. I even had some argument with some of these more popular YouTubers where I was trying to convince them to stop doing these debates, these debate videos over and over and over and over. But again, this is how they get their views. So it became that I was seeing this was not about the scholarly work. This was not about figuring out the truth or whatever, right? Figuring out what scripture was really saying and being able to apply it to yourself. This was about a battle of egos and getting more views and just getting money, I guess. It always comes down to money, I suppose. So this is also why I wanted this to be a free project, and then people are like, oh, you should charge for this and charge for that for all the work that you're doing, right? But spending 8 to 16 hours on this a day, for years and years and years. And sometimes whenever I go to show somebody something, I'll pull up one of these books and it looks like I haven't really done much work sometimes. And I'm like, oh man, you know what? I haven't touched on this. And sometimes I didn't get everything written down that was in my head that I came across. And pretty much anything I was coming across with videos or any research of my own, I would try to get written down. But man, it's so much information to go through and try to figure out how to organize, right? So, let's say like with Matthew here, I went and made this 7 years ago. And this was an idea of like, hey, let's get all this genealogy in some sort of way. I had some weird iPad app that did this, and it's hard to see on here. But the information's there. It needs to be rebuilt, of course. Don't have my sources on where I got some of this information. It's kind of hard to find. But I put it on there because I thought this helped settle the argument. It did replace all of this, and then I ended up putting the text back in there because people were getting kind of weird that the text was gone. So this turned into just that graph up here, that diagram, whatever you'd like to call it. I don't know why I have that before, but I don't know. I'm trying to put it out of the way, but not that I got a lot of that's misspelled feedback on this either. But either way, anyhow, anytime it would show some sort of quote, then I would have it right here. I did have these little notes on the side, but come to find out that if someone was just a viewer, they couldn't see all of this. So I've yet to go through and put in all of this and have each one of these go to. I usually use Bible Hub, and it'll go to the verse so you can compare on your own. So this isn't to make a new translation per se, but this is to be a ever evolving study source that is cooperative by other people to be able to put all the information, good or bad, and let people sort through it themselves and just show, oh, this is a one-stop shop to get all this information. And like I even have this is from the Hebrew Matthew comparing these verses, right? So there's actually a little bit of difference here. There's a video explaining the differences. So if there's a deep research that someone else has done, then I can hopefully link to that and support that user, support that creator, I should say. Sorry. Anywho, kept all the text of Jesus in red, right? But if there's any sort of explanation of verbiage here, then of course that's there. Again, with this green, it looks like I have something called theory. I haven't done that very much. I don't even remember doing that. Maybe this again could have come from someone else's feedback or story while we were studying something, and just put it straight into the text until it becomes enough information to have to make a whole page on it, or when we really work through it, then it'll become its own page. And then I'll try to make some memes or something like that to help explain some of these. And sometimes my memes have kind of grown over the years to not be as direct or straightforward or literal, right? So some of it is to represent just like the dogs and the swine. So this is actually talking about people and their behavior, right? So then I try to make like a dog looking guy and whatever with ChatGPT or something and pig people. But this is more so about behavior. And if I could represent that better in a picture, then maybe I'll redo them again later. I used to have like an actual dog and pig with a pig about to walk over a string of pearls, but that's not what it's talking about, obviously. So if I can have some of that, and these were the quotes that this is the new format that I was going with, and I don't know if it's too busy or not. But again, this is not about the look of it. This is about trying to get the information somewhere to where you can be able to reference back or show that work has been done, even like what work has been done. So I haven't seen any other scholars do this kind of thing. So this is, again, maybe it was just ahead of its time or just kind of confusing for people. I don't know why it hadn't caught on. Now I was saying to others is like, hey, go out and do this yourself. If you don't want to use mine, great, but go and try to do it yourself. The reason I understand a lot of this stuff and I don't have to look up scripture. I don't, you'll see I don't even have the verses here. I went back and started putting in like the ranges of verses here. But the reason for that is so you read the whole thing in context, and I started understanding, roughly knowing maybe what chapter, definitely what book something was from. But I actually started remembering the stories and the meaning of the stories, the purposes of the stories, and that to me was a lot more valuable than just sitting here quoting verses, especially out of context. So it could be good, especially before a lot of this kind of technology. But I mean, we have a way to be able to make notes better and stuff now. So it's like, why not use that, right? And be able to really try to understand, especially with visuals like this. A lot of people don't know what tears are. I didn't either. And to actually just look at it and not have to go, hey, let's stop our study and go research this and find some page about it and hope that that's right, and then continue our study. I remember one time there was the I usually use Luke as an example here because it has I don't know how to pronounce whatever this thing is. Same chart there. But this stopped us for like 30 minutes when we were doing some study. It was someone else's study even. And I was just kind of sitting in the background doing my thing and kind of typing out stuff, and everyone was just stuck on this. Like, what is this thing? Right? And none of these translations were helping. Nothing really explained what this was. So then we had to look up what this kind of old word was. And I was like, oh, it's a stretcher for dead people. Okay, this is what they carry someone who just died on to their tomb or to wherever, right? Or some ceremonial kind of like walking through a crowd sort of thing. So in this story, it's like someone had touched this stretcher that carries dead people. So okay, it's unclean, right? So now I can just have a picture of it, and now there's no research, there's no debate, there's no, oh hey, let's stop our study and kill our train of thought and our flow here, and just see, oh look, it's a thing to carry. It says stretchers carrying dead bodies is carrying bodies. It doesn't even say dead, but and again, if someone has a better explanation or picture or something like that, then I can put that in there. And this is the idea of being able to study with this, is like, wait, if you want to dive deeper in it, we have somewhere to actually put that information. And again, some of these are just kind of ripped off of online and they really need to be replaced anyhow. Not that I'm publishing this in any sort of way or trying to make money off of it, but I'd like them replaced anyhow. Nowadays with AI, I can make something better anyhow. But hey, if there's an artist out there that wants to be able to make a better art for this and wants to apply their talent to this work, then even better. I think that would be fantastic. Some of this I have to reformat again because I put this on page list mode or something right now and it does something weird. So I'll go back and change that yet again. Yeah, there's a page break here. I don't know. This I liked. This was about the road to Jericho. There's a nice video about the people who actually walked along this too, and this is also talking about the dangers of it, and it kind of puts you in their perspective and their understanding of why this was important about this, the Good Samaritan here. So some of this adds a lot of context and a lot of color and depth to these stories. Again, even adding like, what is this coin? It kind of puts you in their position, and this is what this was made to do. There's a lot of these coins, but mustard seed and a mustard tree. I think this was in like Africa or something. Again, I should have an explanation of where this picture came from or whatever, but it wasn't very clean with that all the time. And sometimes I wanted to keep it as simple as possible, but you get the point. This actually held us up for a while too, trying to figure out what this word pods was, because it's kind of a weird explanation. And the words for it were actually fine, but it's just we just didn't have any understanding culturally like what this karbab or yeah karab tree whatever is, which is the best guess on what this was actually referring to. And it was something that was used for feed, and there it's actually really good for you as well, but it was just something simple you can pull off a tree and grind up and make some feed. about the fattened calf. A lot of these things add a lot of texture and depth to the story. Anytime I had some sort of insight that I was getting while doing a study or something like that, I would go because someone's just kind of stuck on something. I'm like, hey, let me simplify it here, and then I'll put that in there. And again, this could be changed, this could be contested, this could be debated, whatever it is. But this is just like with any pastor's commentary on scripture or something like that. That's their understanding and their perspective. And the idea with this is I'm hoping to have multiple people's perspective all in one place and be able to look without judgment, be able to look at other texts that they consider are, taboo because they're outside of the canon. But which canon, right? And that's the other issue is there's so many different kind of canons. I even have, whatever I call it, non-Christian texts, and I have Talmud, I have Quran, I have all kinds of things in here. Some of which are actually kind of cool, like the hymn to Aten, and other ones like Taoism is fantastic, is really awesome to look at. What Buddhism actually teaches is also very interesting. Same as Sikhism, and it's all pretty much all the same thing. What the Quran actually says and how it most likely is actually an old sect of Christianity that created this thing as kind of a liturgy to be able to read in church, not as any sort of scripture, but then was somehow adopted into this religion, Islam, later, which had some addition to this understanding of who Muhammad was. But in the text, it seems to be talking about Christ himself, right? Because it just means blessed one, right? Mahmed, right? Which we also see on coins and stuff earlier than the Quran and on the Dome of the Rock itself, which is also a Christian thing. So that's a whole other thing about other religions and whatever. But the idea is to not be so biased and be so brainwashed to whatever. I think my computer's freezing up. Okay, be so brainwashed or whatever to your own understanding of how you were brought up, what you were taught, and just to kind of be able to open up, but also be able to have some foundation while also trying to open up to some ideas and not just kind of wildly think whatever could be out there, right? And just kind of destroy your whole foundation to go, well, who knows what's right because anything could be right. Well, this is kind of showing that it's like, well, not anything could be right. So if there's an issue with a text, I've got a lot more than even the ones that I show on here somewhere hidden in my Google Docs. Other ones that I still need to like copy over because there's just no online sources. I have a physical copy of these ones, the Maccabean books, which are the Ethiopian Maccabees, which are completely different stories in a completely different location. So kind of wonder why that is. And sometimes we might not even find an answer to why these things are different. Other ones that are very interesting, to say the least, like this gospel here. There's actually two books together: the Gospel of the Nazarene and then the Book of the John the Baptist. The Didache, also a really cool text. Some other ones that are just so fragmented that you can't really do much with. But there's some little bits of information here there that are kind of interesting. Like Gospel of Peter just kind of shows that Peter ran off fishing, upset after the crucifixion. Little things like that that seem very practical and probable, but take it for whatever you want, right? Other ones that are a lot more stronger, of course, are going to be these big three, which used to be part of the Pharisee canon, right? Let's even say, and that happened to also be part of the Qumran priest canon. And these were removed, roughly whatever 160 AD they say, but it's hard to say. Again, so right now I'm trying to figure out what do I do with this project. I even have a website for this that I've yet to even publish and do anything with, and it's like livingwordbible.life or something. Kind of a weird address, but I've yet to find a good format or be able to find a team to do this, let alone the funding to do what I really want to do with this was to actually create a better software that's online, that's either you log into and have an app to that you can be able to search throughout all of these documents, including the notes and everything, right? And also hopefully on the back end be able to make a change so every time I want to maybe change the formatting of a certain word, then it does it across all the different documents. That would be nice because it can take me hours to do that sometimes. even with some of the tools that I have that will do it throughout the whole text. But yeah, there's a lot of information, a lot of work here, and for me, it's been just so much easier to read, let alone remember. Having even female names here in pink have actually been very helpful to know. Okay, this is a woman talking, because sometimes, especially later on the text, you might forget or not know, or especially if you're jumping into it and you don't recognize the name as being female or understand what the character was. Here's like some notes on a different version of, you know, this is comparing to the ESV, so apparently I'm not using the ESV right here. I don't know. I don't even care about what version says, what version. I don't stick to any one version. I make my own version, right? Through all these other ones, I definitely look at the Aramaic and Greek and stuff a lot. And there's two different Greek translations and versions, and that gets a little difficult and complicated. So, um, definitely try not to use ChatGPT very much unless it's about kind of like setting up a format for something, and then I'll go through and change all that. But I definitely don't use it to rely on like for translation or anything like that so much. But it can give you some insight, but you just don't lean on it, and then you also check it three times with three different prompts on three different um, AI models or something like that, because they'll always say something different and be kind of biased one way or another. Um, so let me know what you think. If anyone is watching out there, if anyone cares about this project and would like to see something really done with it, or if you really want to be a part of it, I've got the time now. And again, I do have a Discord where I was really trying to set up a way for people to be able to communicate. Because at first I had it to where people can comment on the documents themselves, but that didn't really work out either. But I just haven't got enough traction to really get this thing going or really invest in. I think it can be one of the most revolutionary and best things out there for the Bible and people of the faith or not, and of any faith really. But I mean, this is just about really any religious text is what I wanted to get into. I even have Rig Vedas and stuff like that. My own interpretations, even on the Rig Vedas and stuff, and showing how it's probably monotheistic, at least originally. Um, Not the ones after that, but there's a bunch of Hindu texts after that that are way later. Those are definitely not. But um, yeah, so this is to, again, just to be able to test everything, to be able to get all of these things referencing each other. So, like any Bible out there is only going to reference other Bible books that are in that canon. But I want to be able to reference the church fathers and other letters that are either debated or even considered forgery or something like that. People throw out that word pretty fast. So it's hard to say what's really forgery, but like let the text stand on its own, right? Like this one I was just reading recently was this book of Jasher that most people probably have not even heard of. It's a lot shorter. It's definitely not like the rabbinic Jasher right here, which is definitely a rabbinic text. Come to find out, that was my theory forever, but then that is what it is. They held on to this and compiled this. And then this guy came up with something that he said he found in Afghanistan, of all places. He went to go visit Israel and then Persia, and then somehow ended up in Afghanistan and supposedly found some old Hebrew text and then translated one of them. And then he was considered blasphemous and what have you. But as with a lot of these kind of people, but in this book, there's no sort of ideas, but it's a different perspective. It's about the son of Caleb during the Exodus, who happens to be named Yashur, right? Really interesting. It's a very shortened version from Genesis to Joshua. Um, and there's a little bit of different information in there, but nothing that you could really even test or anything. There's not anything I would say is very useful for the most part that I've read so far, but it's there, right? And there's also like the Samaritan book of Joshua, which paints Joshua as straight up a king, which is also something that makes a lot of sense. I haven't read through a lot of it because it's very long, and this is something that just takes teams of people to do, let alone me really working with people to read through these things and stay focused and stay motivated. So if you want to be a part of that and you see some value in proper study of the Bible and making new text and new research pages that can go out there and help people and simplify things for people and be able to really focus especially on pages that can focus on concepts with whatever we struggle with as being human, and have something that is supported not only even through scripture, but maybe even have some oddball text from Taoism or something like that that happen to have the same kind of ideas and proverbs and something that you might find in Solomon's writings. Some ancient Japanese or Chinese proverbs and stuff are also very similar. And just be able to show that and show that, yeah, we can actually all live together, all for the simple purpose of truth, right? And this concept of truth is the most important page that I made on here. Probably could use some updating, I'm sure, by now. And we also made this page called Rules of Engagement, which I really like. That was fun. That was a cooperative effort. One of the few things on here that really got a lot of people together to make this, and I'm sure it needs more work, but this was how to behave and how to treat each other. And this is basically truth in and of itself right here. Is this is how you love others, right? You don't judge them, you don't take anything personally. It's not about being offended, right? Because that's all about ego, right? So this is what's really required to go in here and do cooperative work together. So if you're somebody who doesn't have a big ego and would like to deflate your ego even more and work with others that are trying to do the same thing and be able to apply these things to the life so they can affect other people's lives in a positive direction, then let me know in the comments and try to get a hold of me. I mean, I have a very small channel here, so I will notice you right away. And we can live stream through whatever Zoom or Discord or whatever together and work on something, and you can give your understanding, your feedback, and actually have it be somewhere permanently, right? So this is the idea. So that's all for today, and hopefully I'll try to make some shorter videos about just editing and trying to get back into this. So it's been a little while, so I'll probably be kind of rusty for a little bit. So I had about a year hiatus with this after working on it for 6 years. So it was a nice break, but it's going to take a while to get back. But I really need some motivation to see that this is actually worth my time right now. So